Hey everyone, this is Matt from Slam Sector, and you're in the pipe with 5x5, the podcast where we explore things that make wargaming so special. Today we're going to be talking about kind of like the lore and how just explorable and malleable it is in 40k. It's fantastic. I got a lot to talk about it. My guest has a lot to talk about for it. But before we get going, please be sure to like this episode. And if you're not subscribed, it's a great way to help us out and support the show. Also, make sure to check us out on socials and join in the discussion with us in Discord, all of which are linked below. Here to me today is Marc, also known as Templin Institute from the Templin Institute channel. Where they give in-universe lore explanations on all sorts of topics and sundries from sci-fi and fantasy abroad. It's pretty fascinating stuff. Anyway, without getting too much more into it, I'll let him introduce himself. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. It's a privilege to be here. Do you go by Matt or Matthew?
You know, I prefer a little bit more formalities, but for this episode, we'll just stick with Matt.
Zay, do you like that? I'm pretending that I don't know you, that we're not good friends.
I know, right, man? We've torn up Dragon Con and other spots around the world together multiple times, huh?
Yeah, baby. So I don't want to drag out my intro here, but I got a question for you. Is this going to be episode 2 of 5x5?
Yes, it is. This is the second. I guess it's not really a maiden voyage at this point, but the vice maiden voyage.
A slightly less than maiden voyage. I just like that you made it one episode, and then you were like, you know what, we got to bring Marc in here, and I think that was a solid choice. I'm excited to talk about some 40k lore today.
Well, hell yeah, man. Okay, so this topic actually, you and I have been spitballing for like a little while, just kind of like unofficially, and then. I mean, you really forced my hand to make a friggin' podcast happen so that we could talk about it. So,
yeah, it's like easier to think about the times we don't talk about 40k because it does dominate every conversation.
It really does. Okay, so something that Marc and I both really love about 40k specifically is the way that the lore is. You can carve out your own niche or insert your own thing or group of things or environment or ecosystem, and the 40k lore accepts it wholly. Like, you can totally have it in canon with everything else. Well, Marc, what's your opinion of that, and kind of like what's your definition of it?
I wish I had a better way to phrase it. I guess like fan fiction friendly. Or, okay. I don't know, like what I love about 40k, and I guess we could just jump into this, is...
Yeah, let's do it.
I think this is maybe overquoted, but the phrase, everything is canon, not everything is true, and I think that extends not only to the official materials, but stuff that players come up with as well, and that's what makes 40k so special, at least to me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's so cool to, kind of find that journey along with your kind of first warming up to 40k with figuring out like which armies you like, which armies you love to hate. Like, I've got a few of them that I'll never once buy miniatures for, but I really like playing against them. One of them is Necrons. Oh my god, I love playing against Necrons. But I'll stop getting into the weeds on that. But having a reason for my army to in lore hate Necrons is so fun. Right, and that's just one little thing about what 40k is able to do. There's so many like, I call them nodes. I think you refer to them as points, right? There's so many like.
I've never referred to them out loud before, so nodes, points, whatever you want to call them. But they've done a few things, and we were talking about this before. But I don't know if this was something they did deliberately to make the world building and the setting more interesting, or if they were only like, we got to sell more miniatures and we got to make sure this war game makes sense. So I think the first one they did that really works is every faction has a reason to fight every other faction, but also itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, man. The Imperium loves beating up on the Imperium.
Yeah, and what's great about that is every game you play, no matter what the matchup is, there's a lore reason for it to make sense and also quote unquote be canon.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, even if you play it as simple as, this isn't an actual battle, this is training maneuvers,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, you can always come up with something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to drag on Star Wars too much, but I think the appeal of Warhammer 40k was really apparent having come out of Star Wars Legion, where, you know, they release they started off with the Rebels and the Empire, and then I think they added like the hives of scum and villainy they called them, and then after that they kind of ran out, right? So they added in the Clone Wars factions, and I hated it. I hated it so much because all of a sudden you have these games where I got Darth Vader and a Stormtroopers fighting Anakin Skywalker and the Clone Troopers, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. How is this feasible? And right. Warhammer 40k has a bit of that, I guess, with hero characters and whatnot, but it's a lot less aggravating to someone like me who cares about the lore side of things.
Sure, and don't let me forget, because I want to get back into that. There are headcanon ways that I've gotten around that as someone who likes to run hero characters for their stats, but feels kind of weird when it's like, why would Mortarion be down to its last wound on this random game against Tau right now? You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
Like Mortarion wouldn't be about to take his last breath fighting the friggin' Tau. I don't know. But anyway, I'll get into that.
That's another node that you can bring up, right? The whole, you know, everything is canon, not everything's true. So if you have a game where like a Tau Fire Warrior blasts Mortarion, or like even defeats Mortarion in close combat, something crazy that would never happen in the lore, you can just like ascribe that to like this rumor going around, or maybe it happened but someone misremembered it, or maybe it wasn't Mortarion but someone thought it was. Like, there's all sorts of explanations for how you could make that make sense.
Yeah, or like a really novice Tau propaganda writer, right?
Maybe that game is just Tau propaganda, where they, you know, like they think they killed the Space Marine King and they think they killed Slaanesh. Maybe they think they killed Mortarion, and that's what that game is. It's just a memory of a Tau Fire Warrior. That's so cool.
Yeah, man, it's great. I think it kind of in the wargaming ecosystem, as someone who admittedly has played very little of non-Games Workshop war games, but I've dabbled. Come on, I've dabbled a little bit. Yeah, Star Wars feels very limiting, and it's super easy for like an X-wing, for example, for that game to get what's the word I'm looking for, where like these two ships would never meet.
I know the word and I can't think of it. Anachronistic.
Anachronistic. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm glad I found that one.
we dig deep here on 5x5, y'all. But yeah, so it's like it's really easy for a game to just get anachronistic super quick, right? If you got a Naboo starfighter facing down, I don't know, like TIE defenders, I don't think there's any way you can possibly make that happen aside from some random person being like, oh yeah, we found this, like Naboo J. Leno finding a hangar full of some Naboo starfighters, and he's like, oh yeah, I fixed them up. These are the only ones left. Here they go. So
you're absolutely right. Yeah, and I guess you could probably like, it's trying to jam a square peg into a circular hole, right? Like, why would these two factions be fighting each other? I don't know. We'll just have to come up with some crazy explanation that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And I hate to beat on Star Wars too much, so let me go ahead and throw some more punches around the room as far as wargaming goes. Historicals struggle with this a lot. It is to the point to where with historicals, you have to legitimately worry about the shade of your camo on your infantry, right? For like certain years. It's kind of bonkers.
Actually, German infantry did not look like that in 1939. They actually looked like that in 1941. You're off by several pigments there, so we can't play this game. We got to cancel it.
Right. Huge asterisk on this game. The oil pan leak that you have modeled here would be on the opposite side, you see. So.
But I'm actually on the complete opposite side. I'm not sure if I'd go that far. But if I was playing, what's a historical game, like Bolt Action or something? If I was playing Bolt Action and some guy came with like pink Wehrmacht Panzer IVs or something, I would be furious. With historicals, I stick to that's the whole appeal, right? You want to recreate these battles. You don't want to have a guy who's like, I'm going to add my own spin on the German army. I don't like that.
Yeah, no, it definitely. And see, a lot of that behavior, too, is kind of self-correcting, right? The people that want to do their own thing are going to naturally seek out the games like 40k that allow for that. And I guess this entire episode is just an appreciation and later on a how-to of just carving out your own name and your own interpretation of 40k, and it doesn't have to just be yours. It's like your play groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm I'm someone who really loves to beat a dead horse, right? If you've seen us play in the battle reports, but I make sure that my enemies remember my characters' names, just, through them dying or them doing the opposite of dying, making them die, all that fun stuff. Yeah, man, absolutely.
Well, yeah, in terms of carving out your own space, I think that's kind of like the third node or pillar, whatever you want to call it, where the galaxy is big, and every faction has room within it for there to be all sorts of like sub-factions, right? Like the Imperium isn't one monolithic organization like the Empire from Star Wars, where all the stormtroopers are white. They all look like that. No, even within the Space Marines, you got 1,000 chapters, maybe more. So there's always room for every army. You can come up with your own thing and have it fit perfectly.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to say most of the 40k novels open up with that line about untold trillions, right?
Yeah.
Or untold billions, and so like each of those planets, if they're in what's the word I'm looking for? If they're within compliance, they have to submit a regiment, right? And who's to say that the planet that you think submits the regiment that you just thought of, and they're your guys, right? Like that's your planet, that's your guys, that's your justification for them, battery dumping las guns into the giant ancient horror that's stomping forward to them.
Yeah, exactly. And every planet is slightly different, right? There's no standards for any army, I don't think. Maybe the Necrons.
Yeah, no. I mean, oh, dude, here's another cool thing, right? So the world is huge and the world is ambiguous, but also the entire scale of time in 40k is ambiguous, right? So not only can this happen anywhere in the 40k galaxy, but this can happen any when in the 40k galaxy too. There's a few extreme bumpers on one end or the other, but the warp fucking completely circumvents both of those things too. I mean, generally speaking, things are happening post Horus Heresy in 40k, but like warp fuckery happens and things kind of disappear into a pocket and come back out, and it's like, okay, they got completely transposed into a different thing. There's reasons for you to want to use like las muskets if you want, or all sorts of goofy shit. It's just it's really fun to be able to play with so much freedom all throughout the factions in the entire game. Like to have that many different, for lack of a better term, like tribes of characters to draw from, and to be able to put them anywhere in 40k is it's mind-boggling,
Well, it's one of those things where everything, like the Imperium has terrible historians, I guess. So no one really knows what happened, right? So, in any other franchise, I'm going to harp on Star Wars again just because I can't think of any others right at the moment. But, if there was a Star Wars book where it was like, on this day, in this year, Darth Vader was here. And then another book comes out and says, oh, but on that same day, same year, Darth Vader was on the other side of the galaxy. In Star Wars, there's no way to reconcile that. One of those is wrong. Whereas in 40k, maybe both of them are wrong. Maybe both of them are right through some warp trickery. There's this degree of uncertainty that allows you to be as free with your storytelling as you want to be.
That's a good point. And even in the way that they record their time and date signatures in 40k, it's got this long ass number that basically exists, and it essentially increments every 8-ish Terran hours, right?
Right.
But the first number in that is a confidence score on how accurate it probably is.
And that's such a cool little detail.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. So I mean, like, you can have literally the exact same date and probably the exact same confidence score happening, and two completely different things happening at the same time. That's how, like, layers upon layers upon layers 40k is able to get, just with this like beautiful elegance of I don't know. I like to think that they mastercrafted that, but it's probably something they stumbled into to sell boxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's my thinking too, because I'm a little bit of a pessimist on that one, or a realist, or whatever you want to say. But no, it's awesome, and Oh, I just forgot my point. Yours was too good.
Hey, I hear it all the time. It's all right, buddy.
Yeah. I guess I just got it back. Okay, we're good.
Right.
I guess that like 40k is a setting that invites you to interpret it, and every single interpretation is equally valid. So you can have, crazy lore theories, and they're just as valid as anyone else's, or even the official lore.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Well, hell yeah. So, what are some things that you kind of go to inspiration for when it comes to making your own lore? Like what are some things that bring you inspiration here?
History, always 100% history.
You like allegories and stuff like that?
Not necessarily allegories. I like things to be quote unquote realistic, and this is how I approach like all world building, regardless of whether it's for 40k or anything else, or like we do, creative writing on YouTube sometimes. But I always like to just look into history, see something that's happened or an organization that existed, and then try to interpret that within 40k or whatever else I might be doing. So for my current Imperial Guard army, I'm trying to do 1980s Soviet armored forces, and how would that look in the Warhammer universe? And we can't go Valhallans because they don't have any miniatures. So how do I make Cadians become Soviet?
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
then I'm a history buff, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I don't know a lot about history, but I'm passionate about what I do know, I guess, is how I'd phrase it. So every army I have for 40k, at least on the Imperial side of things, is like based on something from history. Like I want to do, I think we've mentioned, or I talked to you about this, but I want to do an Imperial Japan Gene Stealer cult or a Viet Cong Gene Stealer cult. I think it would be incredible.
That would be absolutely amazing, dude.
Yeah.
Man.
You just you can go down that rabbit hole of like, what is something cool from history? How do we make it into 40k?
And see, if you did, and it's like 40k is also completely loaded with tropes that they've obviously stolen from other areas. So,
they're doing what I do too, right? Like the Morty and Iron Guard are kind of Britishy, and then the Valhallans are Soviet, and what are they called? The Vostroyans are the Tsarist Russia. Yeah,
and I mean, the Catachans are just the movie trope version of American troops in Vietnam, right?
That's another one. I want to do a entirely Valkyrie-based Catachan force.
Oh my god, that'd be so good.
Yeah, just Ride of the Valkyrie style coming in. That would be so cool.
And see, here's the thing, man. Like, if you take that Viet Cong Gene Stealer cult army and you play against someone that just has bog standard Catachans, the Catachan versus Gene Stealer fight is timeless, and the Americans in Vietnam are amazing, right? So it's like plucked right out of history. So it makes that game instantly memorable, no matter which way it goes, right? Someone gets tabled turn 3, that's hilarious, and that makes its own friggin' narrative, basically. So I love it.
No, I'm on the same page. I'm picking up what you're putting down, as they say.
My man. All right. Yeah. Something that I like to do with lore when I'm kind of like crafting my own is I like for some of the work to be done for me already. Right. So, in the Death Guard Codex, for example, if you're going through and they're talking about like the successor chapters of the Death Guard, they have a name for it. I think it's like strains or something like that. It's all like sickness and
something
disease.
vaguely medical related, I'm sure.
Right, yeah. There's this random line about this group called the Seventh Day Morbidians also assisting in this battle, and that always cracked me up, that name, because it's just so nerdly and like over the top. It was like Seventh Day Morbidians, what the hell? And so like when you Google that and you go into like the wikis that exist for 40k lore, which by the way, just deep diving into those is also a great way to get inspiration for making your own lore. But there's not a whole lot in there about the Seventh Day Morbidians. It's pretty light. So one thing that I did, I was looking at it, and I'm pretty sure this is still the case. They don't have like a paint scheme or anything. So I'm completely liberated as far as that goes. Like no like ultra 40k nerd that doesn't really embrace that, everything's canon, not everything's true. Mm-hmm. Can't be like, oh, those aren't Seventh Day Morbidians. They don't have the right kind of rust or some bullshit like that, right? So I was able to go like hog wild with a crazy corrosion, like tarnished brass scheme instead of the normal like green and purple tentacles scheme that you see. So it's a lot of fun, and it makes it pop. And just saying that your guys are the Seventh Day Morbidians is just, I don't know, man.
There's like a hierarchy to the setting, right? Like if you're one of those historical wargamers who wants the exact shade of paint used on the German tank or whatever, then you play as Ultramarines or you play as Dark Angels. You play as an established chapter with established lore, with established markings, with established everything, and you can do everything perfectly. Or like next on this hierarchy, you have, chapters or armies or whatever with like a bit of lore, but enough for you to put your own spin on it. And then below that, you have the organizations that have been mentioned once, and then below that, you have just make your own, and they're all equally great.
Yeah, you're really able to pick the intensity of your your craft crap that has to go into the lore for your guys, or you could just be like, I don't know, these guys are blue, I'll figure it out later, right? Like,
so here's my question: where do you land on the hierarchy? Are you one of the guys who wants your Death Guard to look perfect, or are you like, I'll do my own spin on that, or do you want to make your own stuff?
My first army was Death Guard, and I kind of stumbled my way into that because I didn't want to paint them green. I wanted to paint them something else, and so it was like me enjoying Nuln Oil kind of picked the scheme for me, and then I was like, well, shit, I got to figure out why these guys are named this way. It was I kind of like stumbled backwards into it. It was not the most elegant and
and amazing. Wrong way to do it, right?
Exactly. But I really enjoy where I landed. But see, the thing is, I've got like I'm such a sucker for this game. I've got so many armies, and so my plan is to have my Death Guard where they are, like I just described. But then I'm going to be hella compliant with Blood Angels, right?
Ooh, okay.
And then my Tyranids are going to be completely out of left field, just like crazy as hell, right? Or let me look at some models behind me right now. My Nurgle Demons. Demons are just all over the place.
Yeah, I don't think you can paint a demon wrong. Like you could do a demon pink and whatever zebra stripes, and yeah, that's probably what a demon looks like.
It's like, whereas we're doing the lore equivalent of like telling you like you can paint any landscape you want. A demon army is basically like abstract art, right? It's like it's what's the name of that painter that did just like throwing random crap against the wall?
Jim Davis.
I don't know. I want to believe you. I don't think that's accurate. I'm obviously not
Garfield.
Jeez.
No, it's Pollock. Something Pollock.
Pollock. Thank you. Yeah, Pollock. Demons in general are the Jackson Pollock. There we go, Jackson Pollock of painting your own lore, right? Mm-hmm. They can be whatever in the hell you want them to be. Anyway,
demons are extra fun too because everyone interprets the warp differently, right? So
yeah.
I would love to show up to a Warhammer tournament with just like the shittiest painted demons of all time. Maybe they're not even painted. Maybe they're just like not even primed yet. And just be like, well, that's how you're seeing them. I see them as, perfectly painted heavy metal style. So, blame your own interpretation of the warp for that one.
They're still flat pack. You're pushing them around on the sprue, on the table. And mm-hmm. It's just like, I mean, from a certain warp point of view, they're more built than yours.
Yeah, I mean, when I interpret the warp, I actually want a golden demon, so...
Hey man, I support that for you. I believe
no one else will,
in.
But you can't. My interpretation is equally valid. Is the running theme?
Well, see, you are at a unique position where you could make a lore video on it, and you kind of add to that warp energy, right? That Gestalt warp energy, where more people believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a tipping point
at the risk of your credibility.
It becomes the top tier of canon or whatever.
Hey man, with great lore power comes great lore responsibility, huh?
That's what I've heard, yes, but you don't have to follow that.
True. Be as destructive as you want to be, y'all. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so basically what we're saying is there's plenty of different ways. You can completely craft it from the ground up. You can crib it from codexes and books. You can be adherent. You can even one thing that I've seen people do is they figure out their play style and then they work backwards, right? So if you know that you're going to be very mechanized Imperial Guard, or excuse me, Astra Militarum, you know that you want to run like 10 Lehman Russes and like a Dorn tank or two, you can figure out a lore reason why, right? Like maybe you are the planetary defense force for a Forge world or something, you know, and it's like, and the AdMech just do not have the resources to devote to the usual Scutari battalions that they like, or something like that.
And I like also going from the opposite point of view, where I start with the lore and then figure out how I'm going to play it later. Like, this is way down the road for me, because it takes me forever to paint anything, but my dream army is going to be the Death Corps of Krieg, with only infantry, artillery, and super heavy tanks. That's it. And almost 90% of that has to be infantry. Like, I want to make a World War I French army. That's another one of my historical armies I want to do.
Oh, man, you've got so many armies in your future.
Yeah, and that's probably where most of them will stay, but a man can dream.
Hey, you know what? I guess your Sisyphus stone is the paintbrush. I got mad respect for that.
There's an old saying, Matt. There's no law that says a golden retriever can't play basketball, and I try to apply that to my life.
There you go. Now that's from Angels in the Outfield, right? Where that kid breaks his arm?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Absolutely. So, what I want to kind of do with the rest of this podcast, and kind of like some other ideas that I've got, is well, I guess I've already kind of provided some of my personal examples, huh? So I've Seventh Day Morbidians.
Okay. I mean, what do you want to do? What's the task here? What are we doing?
Okay. So, well, oh man, my head's being pulled in like 3 different directions. Okay, first I want to address that hanging thread that I left over, where like Mortarion being shot up by Tau, right? Okay. So, that could just be a lie. But you saying that in lore for your game group, if it's like to a greater group, where I know where some people will give like text-based battle reports in like a group Discord, and you do it in lore and everything, you being like, haha, that game didn't actually happen, sucker, and makes the Tau guy be like, well, what the hell did I just shoot, right? Right? Yeah. So, what I did with my Mortarion, because I obviously have a Mortarion in my Death Guard army, but painting him in this alternate scheme isn't just like, oh, okay, this is his Saturday night outfit, right? Like, this is what he wears out to the pubs. This, instead, what I did is like, okay, that's not Mortarion at all. That is a Chaos Lord who has achieved demon princedom so powerfully that he grew to that size, right?
Another way to interpret it, like if you're in a gaming group and that Tau Fire Warrior kills Mortarion and you want that to be your canon, there's no reason it can't be, right? From now on, you can just say, like, whenever Games Workshop releases official Mortarion lore, you can be like, oh, that's so funny, they got it wrong. They don't know that Mortarion got killed by that Tau guy, and I don't know who they're talking about, but it's not Mortarion.
Right. That's also an option, yeah.
There's always a way to, like, make it work in 40k, and that's what's so great about it.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's a great way to work. Yeah, so some of the other examples that I got, right? Do you know how I came up with my Blood Angels name? So my Blood Angels successor chapter, which is 100% Blood Angels Codex compliant. They are not the original Blood Angels. They are a successor chapter that believes in adhering to the Blood Angels way of doing things 100%. They are the Barons of Dawn. Are you aware of how I got this name, Mark?
Okay, I mean, the Barons of Dawn, I don't hate that. Your Death Guard demon was called, like, Poxatrops or something. So I was expecting something way worse, but no, I don't know how you came up with it. I was going to say you came up with it with some stupid reason, but Barons of Dawn, I like it, so hit me. What did you come up with?
All right, so Barons of Dawn started as a joke with Ryan because he had his Night Lords on the table, and I was smoking his Night Lords in one specific game, and I was like, man, it's really not much night at all, huh? I guess the sun's rising on these guys. And then I just started kind of like riffing on that, and I was like, what's the opposite of Night Lords? What's the opposite of a lord? Or like something that is lordly, a baron, right? And then rolling with the meme of that game, Dawn. And I can't just be the Dawn Barons because that doesn't like punch very well, right? But the
I kind of like Dawn
of
Barons,
Dawn?
but yeah, Barons of Dawn, that's superior. Did I ever tell you how I came up with the very first the name for my very first army, Space Marines, back in like 1998?
Lay it on me. What did wee little Mark dream up to name his Space Marines back then?
Okay, so I had my chapter, and I told some buddies who I played with the name of my chapter, and they were older than me, and when I told them the name, they laughed at me, and I canceled that name after that. I never referred to them as that again. My first Space Marine chapter was called The Nuclear Knights.
Okay. I don't hate it.
Yeah, and actually looking back, I think it kind of works. I think it's cool, but that came from this Nintendo 64 game. God, it was called like Tank. It was like a tank game. Atomic tanks. I don't know, but one of the factions was the Nuclear Knights, and they were a bunch of mutants who had super heavy tanks.
Oh, that's pretty rad. Okay. Yeah. Stealing from other media is also highly encouraged. I mean, actually, so this is a really weird one. But there was a PlayStation 1 game that I was obsessed with in 6th or 7th grade called, and I don't know if it's one way or the other, so I'm going to give both pronunciations, Galarians or Galarians. I don't know what it is, but it's one of those two, right?
Are you thinking of Battlestar Galactica and you just don't know how to pronounce it?
Yes. So there was a big ship and an angry red dressed lady. No. So Galarians was this PlayStation 1 game where you play an angsty boy who's misunderstood by everyone, and it actually has secret psychic powers, right? Super original, I know.
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing, and I remember being obsessed with it because that was the first instance of that trope that I'd ever found. So for me, everyone's just copying this shitty PlayStation 1 game, right?
Yeah, Akira is just a ripoff of Galeria or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and don't get me started on Dances with Wolves. That is so derivative. Anyway, so obviously I'm going to need to dabble in like the Inquisition and Psychers and stuff like that, right? So no one in their right minds knows what the hell Galarians is anymore, unless they fervently Google, which I doubt they're going to do at the table. So when I say that, my Psyker is, Angsty McTeen of the Galarians, they're just going to be like, oh, that's some cool lore, man. So it feels good. I don't know.
And even for some of the more obvious stuff, some of the coolest 40k armies out there are just ones that have taken pop culture and put it into 40k. This isn't 40k, it was for Warhammer Fantasy, but I saw a guy in an issue of White Dwarf actually, who had I think it was it was an Empire of Man army, but it was based on Ash and Evil Dead, an Army of Darkness. So his like general was like this Imperial captain with like this. It was like, I don't know what the rules would have been for it, but it was like a chainsaw hand, and he was in an Oldsmobile. Maybe it counted as a steam tank or something, but that always struck me as something that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. And hey, if you are kind of wondering if you should feel bad about stealing creative identity from something for your 40k army, don't, because Warhammer writers themselves do it. Mark, do you know what the original rule was called for Necron reanimation protocols?
I'll be back, probably, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just guessing, back. But I'm glad I nailed it.
It's it's just so on the nose, man. I'll be back is their, get back up mechanic. It's so goofy. So,
and do you know what the original name of Trizan the Infinite was?
No. What was it?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's
true fact right
crazy.
there.
Yeah. And then the owners of your nation, the British, they have Ghazghkull Mag Thraka or whatever, right?
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher in orc form.
Which, depending on your politics, may be the preferred form. I don't know.
I kind of wish 40k would lean into that kind of stuff more. They've lost the parody aspect, and they've taken it a bit too serious, in my opinion.
I feel like they need to be careful. They're too big to be able to pull that kind of stuff off now anymore. They have outlets for it in like the orc stuff and some of the like demon stuff. You can see that with like the Nurglings and things like that. But outside of those like very specific avenues, they got to be careful with some of the parody, in my opinion. Because
yeah, that's fair. I guess what was the name of that Inquisitor Jedi Master? No, it was, what was it? You know that guy I'm talking about.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that would fly anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like, especially like for how small they were, and that was like kind of the books back then and at that era had a very Mad Magazine type vibe to them. You know, like even the art looked like some Mad Magazine shit.
Yeah, it was pretty goofy.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we're starting to get off reservation.
Yeah,
here,
sorry
but
for taking us off topic there.
No, I think we're fine. I'm bad about it myself. I think basically what I hope we're conveying to you, the listener, is the world is your idea orchard, and we are encouraging you to bite from any and all apples that look delicious to you.
Yeah, interpret it whatever way you want. It's equally valid to any other person's interpretation, including that of Games Workshop itself.
Yeah. Oh, you want to know what the name for my Lord of Change is?
Not really.
Well, I'm going to tell you anyway.
I know.
It's Teotwalki.
Okay.
Do you know how I got Teotwalki for the name of my Lord of Change?
God, no, I don't. Tell me. I beg of you.
All right. So Teotwalki is the pronunciated version of the acronym "The End of the World as We Know It," and that's just so Zinchian. It feels so good, man. I love that so much.
Man, do you know how I came up with the name of my Astra Militarum commander, Lord Solar Fubar?
Oh no! Wow, is that like an ancient
yeah, it's an ancient
Cyrillic
acronym.
name?
I won't tell you what it stands for though. Just have to look that up on your own.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm sure it means everything's working exactly as intended.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Jesus, Mark. All right. So
have I derailed the podcast?
I'm gonna hit you with another one. That I got a million
episode
examples.
3, that's all I can say.
Well, let's see. We'll see what happens. All right. So, Mark, I'm gonna tell you something, and I want you to think about what this could be the name of. And,
what a change! What a nice change! You telling me something, and I'm forced to think about it. Okay, go hit me.
The Viperic Chamber. Now, what do you think that is?
Viperic Chamber. I mean, it sounds kind of like vampiric chamber. I'm imagining you go into this thing and it sucks out your life force, or it does something with life force. Am I wrong?
So the Viperic Chamber is the specific handcrafted disease that my great unclean one, Epidemiax, crafted. It is his signature custom disease. Do you know what it does?
No, I do not subscribe to your newsletter. I would have no way of knowing this.
So the Viperic Chamber, you, the victim, are the chamber, and through warp disease, your organs turn into demonic vipers and they eat you from the inside.
Ugh.
So you are the Viperic Chamber.
Okay, that answers my follow-up question: is why is it called a chamber? But okay, yeah, you've passed my test. I guess that makes sense.
So that was the backwards logic that I used for naming my certain host of Nurgle demons the Guardians of the Viperic Chamber, because they have to guard it. And how do you guard a disease but propagate it, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Man, I gotta put more work into naming my characters because I am way behind. I gotta name all my tanks. I got a bunch of Imperial Guard tanks that need names.
Oh, well, you got a whole video on naming stuff, right? On like naming vehicles and things?
Yeah, so what I'll probably bring into my... actually, would that make sense? Because I'm doing like a Soviet army inspired by that Shock Army stuff, and they don't really nickname their tanks, so I might have to kind of bend the rules of my own theme there, but the nicknames that tank crewmen in the American Army give to their tanks is astonishing, and I want to have, like diplomacy failed written on the barrel of my Demon Rust or something.
Right.
I guess Democracy Deliverer is another good one, but that doesn't really apply to the Imperium, does it?
I mean, so what you could say is that, like, your army could think of democracy as a completely, like, redefined term that doesn't even count. It could be their name for shock and awe tactics.
Yeah, democracy is the name of our king.
Right.
See, that's 40k. Everything works. Nothing is
stupid.
Look
at that. We're doing it on the fly here,
well,
right?
some stuff is stupid, but whatever. It's fine. You just ignore that stuff and say that someone imagined it somewhere.
And that's actually a beautiful thing, too. You really are a la carte buffet style, able to just abandon parts of the lore and stack on parts that you love. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Actually, that leads into this. I want to talk to you about something. So with 40k, is there any like pivotal part of the lore that you just reject?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Yeah. I know. Glad you invited me on this podcast now.
Okay. Pivotal part of the lore that I just reject. There's some back and forth on weird interpretations of what happened when Corvus Corax, the Primarch of the Raven Guard, when he failed his experiments. And this is mild spoilers for some Raven Guard Horus Heresy books, but from my understanding, they're not that good. I wasn't able to finish them, so you're really not missing much, folks, really, believe me.
Oh, okay.
So if you read the Codex, right, the 8th edition Codex, it is strongly suggested that after the betrayal on Istvan, he had to bolster his numbers, and he was like, okay, I'm going to make my own Astartes, right? I'm going to try and do what the Emperor did for Space Marines and make my own. And it goes horribly wrong. And he ends up basically massacring these people that put a lot of faith and their lives in his hands, right? And that's really tragic, and that's one of the reasons why he is such a dark and brooding and agonized character. One of the Horus Heresy books makes it out to where, like, he was going to succeed flawlessly, but then the Alpha Legion actually snuck in there and sabotaged the experiment. And that takes so much energy and gravitas away from his motives. And
it excuses his failure. It kind of loses something, right? It's no longer as dramatic.
It completely blunts the tortured situation that he found himself in, where he was pushed to his limits and had to basically, it was forced into an arrogant action to basically try and achieve what his creator / father / God did to make him, and the repercussions of that. So that is a piece of lore that is canon in Horus Heresy that I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna believe that he's got stronger character development than it being completely sabotaged and taken away from him by the Alpha Legion. So I also kind of don't like the Alpha Legion, so fuck them.
That's solid. All right, I'm going to tell you mine.
Shoot.
So the recent storyline stuff with the Fall of Cadia, the resurrection of Guilliman, all that stuff, I don't know, it flies in the face of the grimdark nature of the setting a bit for me. When I'm reading this story and it's like, when Cadia, Creed was there, and then Treza the Infinite was there, and Abaddon was there, it's like all these heroes are converging, and it starts to feel like an Avengers movie or like a Marvel thing, where it's all these heroes battling it out. And that's not what 40k is to me. 40k is just miserable all the time. You don't have big moments like this. It's too depressing for that. So my interpretation of the Fall of Cadia is maybe that stuff happened, but that story is exaggerated. That's the propaganda version. That's what the Imperium told you happened. But I think all those events might have taken place, but it was over like 100 years. So it was like, yeah, the Living Saint showed up, but that was actually before Cadia fell. She was just somewhere else, and they kind of just brought that into the narrative. And yeah, Guilliman was there, but he didn't actually, like, just interpreting it in like a lamer, less intense, less heroic fashion is how I think that story actually played out, and the Imperium just kind of bumped it up a bit to maintain morale.
Hey, that's fair. And you know what? I want to say, do not think less if you prefer the Avengers style approach, right? Because
every interpretation is equally valid. So if you want to say that, Guilliman and the Silent King teamed up and high-fived the hive mind of the Tyranids or something, sure, yeah, I can't prove you wrong.
Fair. I know another one that you probably believe that I know once I say it will get you all fired up.
Okay.
Do you know what it is?
It could be anything.
I know you're really just a little firecracker here, just ready to go on a lot of hard topics. Mark, go ahead and give me your opinion on what's his name? Polonius, the guardsman that was stricken down and finally convinced the Emperor that Horus was fully lost. Do you think that he was a eternal or
no? He has to be a regular guy. He has to be. I mean, they kept trying to retcon it, or they kept trying to give you different interpretations. I think sometimes it was going to be like a Custodes, sometimes it was like a Terminator or something. It was different versions of that story, right? I think in the first version, from what I understand, so fact check me here, folks. I'm not infallible, despite wanting to be. In the first version, what can I say? In the first version, it's a Terminator.
And
Okay.
then it becomes a guardsman with like holding a standard, and so you could interpret it as like symbolic, like the emperor saw that the standard was being destroyed. And then in another version, it's like a single guardsman that just knows he's gonna go.
Oh man, I hate the standard version of that. The emperor sees this guy holding a flag get vaporized, and he's like, "No, my flag! That's awful." No, I can't accept that.
I think the best version of it is like it's just Mr. Random Generic, who's basically after his death martyred. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what's most powerful to me. Like the idea, like the Horus Heresy kind of gets bogged down in these battles between gods and demigods, and it feels so above the normal person. So the idea that just a regular guardsman was there, like a human being, played a small role in this and just got vaporized, and that it makes sense, right? Because I don't know, it's the complete lack of humanity in Abaddon wasting his time killing just some random guy who didn't pose any threat to him. And also
Horus,
the fact that guy, or sorry, what did I, yeah, Abaddon? Horus, yeah. Horus. And then just a random guy standing up to Horus, that's like incredible. That's such a powerful image. So anything other than that takes something away from that.
I completely agree. And I think as of recording, they're about to come out with the first of 2 books that, or maybe it's already dropped, of 2 books that go over that fight on the deck of the Vengeful Spirit, which is Horus's flagship, and like the culmination of why the Emperor is stuck on the Golden Throne as a corpse god and all that fun stuff. So
and if it does turn out that the Emperor was just upset that his favorite banner got blasted, then I'll just be like, oh, well, whoever wrote that down obviously wasn't there, so...
What if they just combined it all? It was like a man in Terminator armor with the standard, and he's an immortal, and he's just like... Oh man, it's like
that's so stupid. I'm convinced that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna sell that model for $100.
Hey, you know what? I'm such a sucker for it. I'll be like, let me tell you why I reinterpreted this guy as,
I'm pretty sure they're going the regular guardsman route, because the death mask of Lanius Pius, I think his name is, in the Imperial Guard Codex. So there's something there.
Okay, a little bit of credence there, but again, like we said, the lore, pick and choose, they are not even internally consistent with some of this stuff sometimes, and that's the beauty of it, right? They don't have to do
keeps going back to that same node or pillar or whatever, where you just believe what you want, and it's all valid.
Yeah. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. Okay, so, Mark, any other hard takes for this episode, or do you feel like there's a stone that's unturned somewhere?
My curse is that we're gonna stop recording, and then I'll immediately think of, I should have said that.
Well, hey, we'll go ahead and slap a part 2 together. We can make this a seasonal thing if need be.
I guess like if you want to boil this down to like a conclusion or like a what we learned moment or the moral of the podcast, every podcast needs a good moral.
Sure.
Although this isn't one, so whatever. But I guess what I like about 40k is that it's this wonderful sandbox, and it's not a story, it's a setting. And you can engage with that setting on any level, and there's nothing telling you that you're wrong.
It's beautiful. I completely agree. As someone with multiple sandcastles in the sandbox that I am so very proud of, I really like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a genius, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I phrased that really well.
For anyone that's still listening and coping with your towering arrogance, why don't you go ahead and let them know where to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube mainly. I am Marc from the Templin Institute. If you just search Templin Institute, I'm sure you'll find me. We also stream on Twitch and active on Twitter and all that good stuff. Website is templin.institute, and you'll find all the good stuff there.
Awesome. I know I got a little bit of shopping to do, so I might grab a Templin hoodie myself.
Wow, a high-quality piece of Templin merchandise available from our store? That would be a very smart purchase, man. I commend you.
Well, what can I say? I'm very prudent with my money, much like I am when I buy
no one on the 40k podcast is prudent with their money.
Touche.
I only bought 2 basilisks today. I'm really responsible.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the 5x5 podcast, brought to you by Slam Sector. We've got new content coming all the time. Coming up over the next week or so. We've got well, actually, there's a no dice recording of Boomstick playing the Space Marine game. So definitely check out that if you're into that. The 40k games is like an entirely other podcast topic that
Great
I
name, by the way. I love
really
No
wanna get into.
Dice for video games. That's solid.
Yeah, I know. There's something that I'm very proud of, and that's some of the naming conventions we got for things going on here. But we've got every Monday we're doing battle reports. We got it hasn't happened yet, but it will have happened by the time you folks out there are listening to this. We've got boarding actions coming up in the pipe that I am super, super excited about. In fact, I'm so hyped. I don't think there's a way for me to not do a video, or excuse me, not a video, but a podcast on it. In some way, shape, or form. And the fact that I just put that out in the air like this means it's going to be manifested, because I am never going to lie to y'all on purpose. Anyway, remember, if you enjoyed what you heard today, to like this episode, subscribe if you want to get updated when new episodes go up. Check out our socials at Slam Sector on Twitter and TikTok, and at slam.sector on Instagram. And if you'd like to participate in this discussion, join us at the Discord, which is at discord.gg/slamsector. Thanks for listening. This is Matt from Slam Sector, signing off.